Awake my heart, a universal language. The Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. Matthew 20:28. In recent times, there has been a desire to find a universal language. There have been three competitors: Esperanto, English, French, quite apart from the language of the lips. However, there are languages which are already universal. There is the universal language of natural beauty. Psalms 19:1-4. This is a language which speaks to people of all colors and climes. I stood with a German, a Frenchman, and an Italian on one of the heights of Haute Savoy in France. On Haute Savoy in France, we looked out in spellbound admiration over the magnificent vista of those French and Italian Alps. Each of my three companions knew only his own language. None of them can understand what any other commented. But there was one language which was speaking with equal clearness to us all, the language of that wonderful beauty before our eyes. There is a universal language of human art. I turned on my radio the other day and found a quick succession of languages: German, Dutch, Russian, not one of which I could understand. Then suddenly there came a burst of glorious music, and no matter what country it came from, immediately it was a language which I understood. Some years ago, an acquaintance of mine was at an exhibition of Chinese art. In London, the exhibits were of a very different style from our traditional English. Yet again, there was a language speaking through them which was universal, and the beholders would exclaim, "How perfectly lovely!" We have talked about British art, European art, Asiatic art. Perhaps the time is nearing when we shall speak about world art. Most of all, there is the universal language of self-sacrifice. I heard a Scot telling about the history lessons at school when he was a boy. All the heroes whom they were taught to admire were Scots: Robert Bruce, William Wallace, John Knox, and so on. Those who lived down beyond the border or in the other lands were foreigners and a bad lot. How different is the teaching of today. We have found that whichever country it comes from, the language of heroism and sacrifice speaks to us all. Joan of Arc could not speak English, but she spoke a language which all the world understands. During the First World War, even when bitter feelings were strongest, a British airman, telling his radio listeners about a German who sacrificed himself for others, said, "My, he was a brave chap. That German, yes. There is something in vicarious self-sacrifice which talks to us all." The greatest of all vicarious self-sacrifice and the highest expression of all moral beauty is the sacrifice of our Lord Jesus, the incarnate Son of God, on Calvary. Why? Because it was the most utter self-sacrifice for others by the loveliest of all characters under the costliest of all circumstances with the loftiest of all motives, for the sublimest of all purposes. The appeal of that cross is universal. It appeals to the heart as light, to the eyes as truth, to the conscience and as beauty, to the aesthetic sense. A cultured Brahman said to a Christian missionary, "I don't like the Christ of your creeds and churches, but the story of Jesus in your book is the most appealing I ever read." Calvary is a universal language.